Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January 25th, 2012 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education Legislative Meeting. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to ask everyone to please turn off all cell phones and pagers or put them on vibrate. Would everyone please rise so we can salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight we would like to take a few minutes to acknowledge and recognize the work of the Gateway Medical Society's Youth Mentoring Program. I'd like to ask board members to please come forward, and I will turn this portion of the meeting over to Susan Chersky.
Thank you, Mrs. Zuda. Tonight we would like to take a few minutes to acknowledge and recognize the work of the Gateway Medical Society. Gateway sponsors a number of programs that seek to connect minority and underserved communities with healthcare and health education. In 2010, Gateway started the Journey to Medicine academic mentorship program to specifically address the shortage of male African American physicians. The mentorship program provides regular education activities to 15 African American sixth grade boys each year. The male students learn many skills, including public speaking, suturing a cow heart, and performing CPR on a mannequin. To accept this recognition, we have with us this evening representatives from the Gateway Medical Society and several students who are benefiting from this wonderful program. I would like to introduce Mr. Morris Turner, the Youth Program Coordinator. And two officers of the Gateway Medical Center Board, Dr. William Simmons, who is the president of the board, and Dr. Jan Madison, who is the chairman of fundraising. The students joining us this evening attend the following schools: Pittsburgh Allegheny, Pittsburgh Sterrett, and Pittsburgh Stevens. Pittsburgh Allegheny students include Langston Brentley, Andre Miller, Roman Ramsey, Taylor Talber, Gregory, sorry. Pittsburgh Sterrett students include Jeremiah Jones, Daryl Thompson, Odell Minifield, Jordan Rawls, Sean Spencer, Lamar Todd, and Amir Thomas Lester. From Pittsburgh Stevens, we have students Devon McNary and Aladdin Wilson. Aladdin, sorry. Thank you to the Gateway Medical Society for providing such a wonderful opportunity to these students attending the Pittsburgh Public Schools. We wish all of the students here tonight and currently in the program much future success. Let's give them a round of applause. Yeah, I told them they could come in. But we'd also like to invite the parents of the students at this time to come in.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Come on in. Okay. Not yet. Thank you again to the Gateway Medical Society and the students and parents that came out this evening. At this time, I ask that we turn our attention to the 9 board members standing to my left. Each year, the Pennsylvania School Boards Association designates January as School Director Recognition Month. to honor board members across the Commonwealth for their willingness to serve as advocates for school children and their families. To show our appreciation for your dedicated service to Pittsburgh Public Schools, we're presenting each of you with a copy of the book entitled The Hope Chest. The Hope Chest is a novel that was chosen and approved for 5th grade students. The novel depicts events surrounding the eventual ratification of the 19th Amendment. 5th grade students will begin reading the Hope Chest at the beginning of the 3rd report period this year, which begins the week of February 6th. Each copy of the Hope Chest contains a book plate with the following inscription. The book is presented on behalf of each board member's name in appreciation of his or her commitment to the students of the Pittsburgh Public Schools as a member of the Board of Public Education. School Director Recognition Month, January 25th, 2012. And then each board member may choose to make this book a gift to an elementary school library in your district, to the public library, or to a child in your life. We have also been asked this evening by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association to present Mr. Mark Brentley and Mr. William Eisler a certificate of appreciation in recognition of their 12 years of service to the Pittsburgh Public Schools and public education in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's certificates for them. Congratulations, Mr. Brentley and Mr. Eisler. And on behalf of the staff at the Pittsburgh Public Schools and Superintendent Lane, we want to thank each of you for your dedication and service to the young people and families of the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Thank you. Please join me in a round of applause.
Thank you, Ms. Charsky. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
Here.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Here.
Mrs. Fink?
Here.
Dr. Hawley? Mr. Eisler?
Present.
Mr. McCray?
Here.
Ms. Shealy? Mr. Sumter?
Present.
Mrs. Azuda?
Here.
8 members present.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Sumter to please share our core beliefs and commitments.
The Pittsburgh Board of Education firmly believes that we can educate every child to their maximum level of achievement. We want to ensure that that's done in a safe and orderly work environment for students and staff. We want to ensure that resources are distributed in an equitable manner, provide the necessary support in an efficient and effective manner, and last but not least, do what we can to improve public and community engagement within the Pittsburgh School District. Those 5 beliefs we feel will improve the governance of the Pittsburgh Board of Education and translate into higher academic achievement for all students within the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Will everyone please turn to the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions?
Hearing none, move to approve.
Eisler and Khaleesi, I have motion to approve the minutes of the December 20th, 2011 legislative meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to read the executive session statement. In addition to executive sessions announced at the legislative meeting on December 20th, 2011, the board met in executive sessions on January 9th, 2012, January 18th, 2012, and immediately before this legislative meeting to discuss various personnel matters that may include but are not limited to administrative vacancies and positions opened and closed. Finally, at the executive session immediately before this legislative meeting, the board discussed student discipline cases that involved violations of various portions of the Code of Student Conduct. The board does not vote at executive session. Let's turn to the Education Committee.
Point of order, Madam Chair. There's a special legislative meeting, errata, the minutes from that meeting on January 9th. Do we need to approve that?
Point of order. It was a continuation meeting, recessed.
Do we need to approve the minutes for that meeting that was recessed to a later date? That's the only question.
It's all part of the same meeting, but recessed.
The meeting on the
December 20th.
9th was a special meeting.
It's a separate meeting.
It was recessed until the 18th. So I believe a motion would be in order to approve the minutes of January 9th.
Move to approve the minutes of the special meeting of January 9th, 2012.
Eisler and McCray. Thank you, Mr. Sumter. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, cool. Thank you. All right, we'll begin with the committee reports. And first on education, that's before you, submitted by Ms. Shireen Shealy, Chair, and her committee. If you would please turn to page 10 of 10 of the report. I'd like to give you the student suspension, transfer, and expulsion numbers for this month. 50 students were suspended for 4 to 10 days. No students were suspended for 4 to 10 days and transferred to another Pittsburgh public school. 1 student was expelled out of school for 11 days or more. No students were expelled out of school for 11 days or more and transferred to another Pittsburgh public schools. Are there any questions or comments on the committee report on education that were not addressed at agenda review? Mr. Brentley, we'll start with you.
Yes, I've had some comments concerning page 3, number 5. This is the contract with the Bevins Consulting Solutions. Raised my concerns. I still have pretty much the same concerns. Will not be supporting this item for a couple of reasons. The continuation of the contract, the term and the amount of the contract, and for the fact that I believe we should be at a point where we can begin to practice what was taught to our district. And so it concerns me when we continue to have these contracts that seem to go on, and at the same time, which I'll continue to mention, we're laying off teachers. We are laying off librarians. And there are some schools with part-time librarians. So it makes no sense, so I will not be supporting that item. The next question I have is on page 6, number 12. I raised comments at the agenda review concerning the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with Robert Morris University. I have some concerns there. Wonderful, wonderful thing for a university to want to come in and to provide tutoring services to our students. But it concerns me when they say there's a zero cost, when they actually have access to our students and their possible future relationships that they can actually grow off of this event. Secondly, I raised concerns about the report 2 years ago concerning local universities and their lack of keeping students in their universities, almost like a revolving door. We have the Pittsburgh Promise. I don't know, but we need to develop as a district some kind of rule or measurement on the university, so before they can come in and to get a wonderful relationship with this district on a volunteer basis with a zero cost, that we have some kind of rating system. How well are you doing with our students? How well are you retaining African American students? How well are you doing on the national and local scene in terms of its reporting? So I will not be supporting that item as well. My next question is just a very simple question, number 14. This is just a general question. Dr. Lane, on this item, which is also another contract, EBS, we have or we do not have anyone in the district who can provide any of these services?
Mr. Brentley, as I recall this item, it was to do some fill-in services because of a shortage of certified people that we were able to hire.
Okay, and in the last 2 or 3 rounds of layoffs, were there any of those individuals who can possibly fill some of those vacancies?
No, there were not.
Okay, I just want to say and remind the administration as well as HR that when in every possibility, when we're looking at providing or filling in positions, that we keep in mind the wonderful, wonderful dedicated employees that we laid off or furloughed. My final question would be number 16, page 9. I raised concerns at the agenda review. This is the adoption of the revisions of the board policy of the 900 records management. I will not be supporting this item. This is an issue of procedure. I shared my concerns with the chair of this committee. You don't just wake up and decide to change something. It is a board. We work together. We had a similar situation a couple of months ago. Same committee made recommendations. In its recommendations of changing some of the policies included lowering the standards for some of our students, included some changing of some language to change the names. And so it concerns me when one board member has the authority or the power to change and move it through the system swiftly, because it will pass tonight with flying colors. It concerns me in terms of the process that we should be using. It concerns me about not being able to give the public the trust that it needs in this board, that everything is going through the same process, especially one that would make the changes available to the public prior to our voting on it. So I will not be voting on that item, and once again challenge leadership of this board that we must find a way to make issues even and fair across the board. Over the years, I have attempted, as chair of the committees that I chair, of trying to bring small items through, and it was often voted down, not voted down, it never even received a second to be considered. Small items that would be a zero cost to the district never made it to this floor in terms of being considered. But we can allow one or some board members to make huge changes here and attempt to hide behind the law or other procedures to get it passed, and we let it go through. So once again, to the leadership of this board, I'm asking for consistency. I'm asking that you remember that we're all board members and we all should have the same rights and authorities in making recommendations. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. And that actually echoes some of what I had sent out a memo to the board that I had attended a PSBA school board president training, and one of the issues was to have consistency in how you do things and to not have things brought up at the last minute so that no one's surprised at what's going on. And so that does kind of work with what you're doing, and so I think it's appropriate that we are consistent in that the board is shared information prior to being expected to vote on it so that we have the opportunity to ask questions. So thank you very much. Ms. Khaleesi.
Thank you. My questions were all answered at agenda review.
Mrs. Fink. Dr. Hawley.
Item number 5, page 3 of 10. The Bevan Consulting Solutions. I am going to say again that I'm a bit, I want to say first and foremost that the Bevan Consulting Solutions company was able to do a good job in helping us with our RISE program. However, I do believe that it is now time for the district to work on our own in this area. I think it's time that we stop, that consultants are not supposed to be with us for a long period of time. And I think that her starting with us in 2007, I do believe, up until now, I think that that should be enough. So I will not be supporting this particular board tab. I will agree with my colleague that item number 14, no, what is it, the last one? item number 16, that when we are doing board policy, that should come before us first, before we start to change the policies that we currently have. And I would like to look at those prior to having those come out to the public for a vote. But I do want to say, after having the public hearing on Monday, I do want to commend Mifflin for working through the process on bullying and bringing this company in to support them and helping them to work through the problem that they're having at their school and that we have at many of our schools in the district. And I just want to commend them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mr. Eisler.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I just want to make it very clear on this records management policy that this is one policy we're looking at tonight. It was sent out to the board prior to agenda review and discussed at agenda review. It's primarily to bring us within the current laws that govern this board, both federal and state, and it is procedural more than anything else. It is, I think, going to be a cost savings because it is going to make our records management current, up to date, and allow us to, if not digitalize, eliminate a lot of paper, which we are basically drowning in. So this is purely a procedural recommended by our solicitor in the law department. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Mr. McCray.
I just need clarification on something on number 5. The funding for that, are we allowed to use that to hire teachers or any other staff members?
If you're referring to the item on Bevan Consulting, no. Although I know that sometimes there is some concern expressed in regard to contracts of this nature, especially in the constraints we have on our operating budget. This money could not be used to hire staff, no.
Thank you. I just needed clarity on that. Thank you.
And maybe I need to be clear. It could be hired staff for the effective teacher program, but it could not be used, like, for example, to bring back a music teacher or art teacher or something like that to a school, no.
Thank you. That's the clarity I needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Mr. Sumter.
No questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes on the report. I'll be voting no on page 3, number 5, no on page 6, number 12, no on page 9, number 16.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Dr. Hawley?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on number 5 on page 3 of 10, and no on page 9 of 10, number 16.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. Cray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on item 5 on page 3.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
The report's approved. Item 5 had 3 no votes, and item 16 had 2 no votes. But then item 12 had 1 no vote, but the report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We will now move on to the committee report on business and finance submitted by Mrs. Khaleesi, Business Chair, and Mr. McCray, Finance Chair. Are there any questions or comments that were not addressed at agenda review? Mr. Brentley.
No questions.
My questions were answered at agenda review. Thank you.
Mrs. Fink.
I'm good, thanks.
Dr. Hawley.
No questions.
Mr. Eisler.
My questions were answered at agenda review. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Mr. McCray. Mr. Sumter.
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Dr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Report's approved 8-0.
Thank you. Let's now move on to the report on personnel that includes addendums A and B that is before you. Are there any questions on the personnel report at this time? Oh, before we start our questions, Dr. Lane, do you want to read the two memorials?
It is with great sadness that I write to inform you of the heartbreaking death of Shatika Roach, a personal care aide at Pittsburgh Conroy on Sunday, January 1, 2012. Mr. Rudley Mervos, principal at Pittsburgh Conroy, staff, students, and community pay the following tribute to her memory. Ms. Roach was a graduate of Langley High School and joined the Pittsburgh Public Schools in 2004, working in numerous positions. Ms. Roach was currently a personal care aide at Pittsburgh Conroy. Affectionately known as Ms. T, Ms. Roach was loved by students and staff. A kind and wonderful young woman, Ms. Roach was always on hand to offer help to anyone in need. She was at all times ready to give a smile or a hug to a student or a colleague. Ms. Roach has two daughters. Her oldest daughter, Anaya, attends Pittsburgh Beechwood. Her second daughter, Kayla, is 7 weeks old. Shatika Roach was an outstanding individual, a devoted mother, and a vital member of Pittsburgh Conroy's community. She will be greatly missed. Respectfully submitted, Linda Lane, Superintendent of Schools. The second memorial. Dear Board of Directors, it is with great sadness I would write to inform you of the death of Aline, and I'm going to mispronounce her name. Can anyone help me with that?
It's Scalaney.
Scalaney, an early childhood education assistant on Wednesday, January 11, 2012. Mrs. Scalaney began her employment with the Pittsburgh Public Schools in 2001, and her most recent work was as a paraprofessional in early childhood at Pittsburgh Concord Pre-K through 5. Ms. Carol Brown Martin, Executive Director of Early Childhood, Staff and Students, Community, pay the following tribute to her memory. Ms. Scalaney was such a kind person. The children in her class only had her for a few months, but she made a lasting impression on them. She interacted with them to help extend their learning and praise them for their efforts. The children talk about her every day to say how much they miss her. Mrs. Scalaney was always ready to go above and beyond her job responsibilities. She automatically knew what needed to be done and took care of it. She was a great organizer and gave so much support in the classroom. Mrs. Scalaney loved her job and tried very hard to get well to return to the classroom. Ms. Scalaney is the beloved wife of Stephen J. Scalaney, adoring mother of Stephen and Nicholas Scalaney, cherished daughter of Daisy Petrovich and the late Irwin Golwacki, dear sister of Kim and the late Jeffrey Golwacki, aunt of Lacey Golwacki, and loving cousin of Tammy Kevin Clark, her children Brittany and Brandon, Keith Hall, and the late Val DeLuca, and the niece of Rudy Petrovich and the late Olga Hall. Respectfully submitted, Linda Lane, Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Lane. Okay, now we'll go back to the personnel report at this time. Mr. Brentley, do you have any questions?
I just want to first send out my condolences to the Roach family and just to remind them that our prayers will continue to stay with the family. And I do want to encourage our staff to remind the daughter that is still in the district about the important services that we do offer to all of our students when they're going through troubled times. Second, I'd like to just point out under the addendum B, number 1 under C, transfer from one position to another with change in salary, and that is the position of Mr. Anthony Varlata. He was the acting principal of Greenfield, and he is now going to be the acting assistant principal of Pittsburgh Westinghouse, but he left a great marriage, and that was the marriage over at Allegheny with Tony Kendricks and Mr. Varlata, who worked together, and it was unbelievable seeing the two of them work together. And I know how important we have to think district-wide, but I just want to caution the administration that if we're not on top of things in a certain area, it can impact other parts of this district that are successful. And with the breakup of this marriage that we had over at Allegheny is a perfect example. I will wish Mr. Verlotta the best wherever he may go, but we do want to remind him that we definitely miss him. We definitely miss the relationship that they both have developed for all the students at Allegheny. The second question and final question is the addendum A. Dr. Lane, we are opening up positions, 15 positions for light cleaners / firemen, and then we're also opening up 100 positions for light cleaner substitutes. Backfill means what? Which is under the cleaners. What does that mean?
I'll respond, and I'll ask Ms. Fuller to correct me if I'm wrong, but backfill means there's an opening, and we're pulling someone into an existing position. So someone has either moved up or moved out, and so by backfilling it, you're bringing someone in to fill that.
Okay, thank you. And the second question there is, for the light cleaners, Ms. Spolar, please tell me that we are working from the list of light cleaners that we laid off a couple of months ago.
That will definitely be our first source of recruitment for these positions.
Okay. Well, we just want to say them, and I hope we're successful with getting, if not all, but most of them back, and that we had a lot of dedicated employees who I'm certain would be just anxious to hear the call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Mrs. Khaleesi. Mrs. Fink. Dr. Hawley. Mr. Eisler.
Yes, I just, again, the tributes that were sent out to the Roach family and the Scalani family, I just want to thank the principal of Conroy for preparing it, and also Carol Barone Martin to let us know the great work these two individuals did for our students. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Mr. McCray.
I do want to echo that concern, and also it's going to be a big hole that they have to fill at Conroy. I hope they can do that because the students really need them there. And also want to thank any of our employees that are in the military serving their country. Thank you for a job well done.
Mr. Sumter.
No comments, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Dr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Reports approved 8-0.
There are no financial reports in January and February. We will have financial reports for the months of December, January, and February at the March meeting. There are
Azuda.
Mr. Eisler.
Mr. Camarda, as we close out the fiscal year, are we experiencing any surprises, or are we within budget?
We're within budget. We have no big surprises right now. We're monitoring the end of our revenue collections and accruing our expenditures. So
right, and
nothing's surprising yet.
Great. So that is for 11 and 12 as we go forward. Are we going to be affected negatively at all by the delay in the release of the tax statements and collections thereof?
We don't expect to be affected negatively to the point where we would have to have tax anticipation notes.
That's
so fabulous. There is a delay, but we know that the discount period will now just be pushed through the end of March, and that lines up right when we need to have our cash come in. So we'll be fine.
So no, you're not anticipating any tax anticipation notes, correct?
That's correct.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you. Mr. McCray. Mr. Sumter. Okay, there are no new business items before us this evening. Typically at this time we go around, and if anyone has anything they want us to vote on, we give that opportunity. But again, from the training I went to for Pennsylvania School Board Association, the recommendation is that we submit any new items to the full board prior to agenda review. That way we have the opportunity to discuss it, ask questions, and give it the proper consideration it would have it legislative. But since I only did that last Friday, I didn't want to catch anybody off guard in case they had anything they were wanting to bring up. So does anyone have anything they would like us to discuss that needs legislative approval this evening? Anyone? No? Okay. Then we will go around. Are there anything that you want to just announce or talk about, Mr. Brentley?
Yes, I have a couple of things. I first have to say that I was really appreciative of the recognition for board members that we received today from PSBA and from the administration. But I just want to let them know, according to the folks at Allegheny, they were a little slow. I was invited today for my annual event at Allegheny, and I have little pins that the staff wore. It's a picture of me, and it says Pittsburgh Allegheny Honors School Board Director Mark Brentley, Pittsburgh Public Schools. Do you have one, Mr. Tyson? No. Okay. And I just want to...
in all due respect, I don't think I want one. I mean,
this is what I get every year from thoughtful staff, and it was a wonderful, wonderful event. And I promise to acknowledge those who had breakfast with me this morning. And so please give me an opportunity to mention, I want to just a special thank you to the Honorable Elijah Cobb, who was the Vice President, the Honorable Jakar Tucker, who was Treasurer, the Honorable Brooklyn Lowry, who was the President. Interesting story with the President. This is her third time on Student Council for Allegheny. She first was a treasurer, and I believe she was vice president, and then she eventually moved up to president. Extremely sharp young lady. The Honorable Tyrese Jennings, who was a secretary. The Honorable Nijay Harrison, who was a 5th grade representative, and the Honorable Madison Blake, who was a 4th grade representative, and the Honorable Kennedy Walker, who was a 3rd grade representative. We had lunch. They were able to pick my brains and to talk about what it was like being a board member and what they should do to help make it better throughout the school year. It was a wonderful, wonderful event under the leadership of the principal, the new principal there, as well as something that was started, I believe, many, many years ago with former principal Ms. Burgess. So I wanted to say thank you to all of those who worked very hard. Secondly, I want to point out something that was in the Pittsburgh Courier. This is December 21st to the 22nd, 2011. It says, Pittsburgh's new Blue Magic lead singer. To those of you who aren't familiar, Blue Magic is like an R&B group that had a lot of great hit songs, Spell, Stop to Start, and Three Ring Circus, a lot of great songs. Well, they recently signed a new lead singer. I'm only going to read one small section here. His name is, the new lead singer is Gene Stovall. And just one little selection. Mr. Stovall began cutting his performance chops while a student at Beechwood Elementary School, where he met his first vocal mentor, Henry Biggs, who later became the head of the vocal studies for Rogers Middle School for the Creative and Performing Arts. Next, Stovall attended the Margaret Mallions Middle School, where he performed his first play, August Wilson's Joe Turner's Come and Gone, at the Pittsburgh Public Theater, where he won the audience's heart as Reuben. He then went to attend Brashear High School. Stovall was musically trained at Duquesne University at the Mary Papert School of Music for the vocal performance, and also at the Pittsburgh Public Schools for the Creative and Performing Arts as a vocal performance major by David Jennings Smith. And I just wanted to say it's a wonderful group, a lot of great songs, a lot of hits, a lot of history, and here it is, the lead singers from the Pittsburgh Public Schools. So we just never know where our students will pop up. I do have one or a few other little things I'd just like to mention. I do want to also give Dr. Lane, I have hopefully what will be the final packet, a packet that I received from the community at Westinghouse. And Doctor, I think I've shared with you before some of their concerns, and so I am asking that you would take these concerns, and if possible, if you can respond in writing, and then possibly set up some kind of meeting with them. I've read it, it concerns me. I think it's something that the administration should definitely respond to. I never mind working for and helping others, but What's difficult for this particular area, this community, that it seems that nobody from the administration will actually engage or respond to them. So I'm asking if you would, Doctor, I'll pass this down. Please, if you could set up something with them and please respond, I would appreciate that. The final thing that I just want to mention, and this is a issue similar to what was made earlier about board training and so on, and I've shared with some of the board members as we enter African American History Month. I want to strongly suggest to our board leadership the importance of finding a way to making this board much more inclusive. And I shared with at least two of you individually my concern in terms of the authority and the power that rest with the Executive Committee. To those who are not familiar with it, the Executive Committee is made up of 3 board members, the first vice president, second vice president, as well as the president, and they can appoint chairs. And I just want to encourage this leadership again to tap into all of the wealth of knowledge that we have on the board. I want to suggest very strongly to this leadership of the board that we find a way to make a perfect match. For the first time that I've been on the board in 12 years, have we ever had an educator sitting at this end of the table. And I'm asking Madam President as well as the Executive Committee if we can find a way to strongly use the leadership of the Honorable Dr. Holly. 30-plus years of service. It would be a wonderful fit in terms of consideration to chair the Education Committee. It would also be an opportunity for the community to see, hey, we got an educator, someone speaking the language, and also working very, very close with the administration. So I shared this before. I'm asking that you would consider, I know committee responsibilities have been made, but it's not a biggie. You can easily make those changes and adjustments. And so I'm asking that this leadership would consider that and make sure that we make that move. And I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, and I am not here to make anyone embarrassed at all, but when you have the kinds of skills that we have in our colleague, we just have to find a way to put them in place. I would love to hear her opinion on some of the things that we have in place, something we haven't had in a long time. So I'm asking if we can possibly consider that. It would be a great service to the board. It would be a great service to the entire city of Pittsburgh, matching an educator as the chair of the Education Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lane.
I just wanted to mention, this was earlier in Mr. Bentley's remarks, but that we are right now, I had previously agreed to have a parent meeting at Westinghouse High School, and we are working on a date for that at this time.
You will include the Westinghouse group as well, the Alumni Association?
It will be a public meeting, so anyone who chooses to attend is certainly welcome.
Okay. And Doctor, those items there, you know, are specifically from that group. And I don't want to direct to you because, once again, you've pretty much walked into this. As you know and follow this over the last couple of years, previous administration purposely went out of its way to engage, to talk to sit down, to work with. East End Homewood is a part of this city, and we just simply have to find a way. We are engaging other communities. We are working with them, especially in light of what has happened at Westinghouse High School. It's just unacceptable, and it's unacceptable for an administration to go on without publicly explaining what happened, or go back to the Fred Logan letter. Not an unreasonable request. And so I'm asking, because it makes our job a little easier when we can show our administration is willing to meet and to talk and to work things out regardless of who they are and what kind of opinions they have. So I am asking that you, regardless of the meeting, that you please find a way to respond to some of those concerns. I can't respond to them. And so it would be helpful. It would also give us an opportunity to put behind us the terrible precedent set by the previous administration of actually having a vote on the floor to ask if he should go and meet with people in Homewood. That's unacceptable for for an appointed superintendent to say, I don't want to meet with someone. So I'm asking that you would do that, and let's just break that mold and start over. It's a new year. Thank you.
Mrs. Khaleesi, Mrs. Fink, Dr. Hawley, Mr. Eisler.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Just two things very quickly. To Dr. Lane and the staff, this curriculum update I find very, very helpful and a wonderful, wonderful publication. I hope it is available also on our website for the public because I think there's some information that is very, very helpful to parents and those people who are individuals in the community who are involved and interested in public education. And I think the issue of board recognition, I personally cannot accept the recognition without noticing the people from A+ schools and Board Watch. You know, we talk about this being a volunteer job. It is a volunteer job. We decide to do it. Those individuals also volunteer their time and effort, and I think the more people that are involved in public education at Pittsburgh Public Schools, the better. I want to thank you and your organization for being faithful to providing your services as Board Watch volunteers. So thank you during this month of recognizing individuals who do work on behalf of public education. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Mr. McCray. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I'm a member of the Friends of the Carnegie Library Hill District branch, so there's several events that are going to be taking place at that library during the month of Black History Month. Hill District branch of Carnegie Library is located at 2177 Center Avenue in Pittsburgh, and during the month of February there's going to be a Black History Bowl that's going to be for customers age 6 and up, and that'll be held on Saturday, February the 11th at 1 p.m. On Saturday, February 18th, a taste-off. It's going to be the best sweet potato pie on the Hill contest. Each contestant's asked to enter 2 pies. Pre-registration is required. Prizes will be awarded, and that's on Saturday, February 18th at 11 a.m. On Monday, February 27th, there will be a book talk and signing, and that'll be at 6 p.m., and it'll be with the authors Lawrence Glasgow and Christopher Rawson. And the book is August Wilson, Pittsburgh Places in His Life and Plays. So if you want a book signing and also the ability to purchase the book, that'll be available on Monday, February 27th. And for more information, you can call 412-281-3753, 412-281-3753. Thank you. And also, don't forget to invest in our children's future. Please give to the Pittsburgh Promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. First of all, I want to thank you for the book. I'm in the middle of reading a Robert Weideman book that our students read. So when I finish that one, I'll start this one. But with all this other reading we do, it takes me a lot longer to get through books these days. But I will enjoy that. Thank you. My thanks, and all our thanks, I think, to Dr. Oak and the children of Carmel K-8. We thoroughly enjoyed the video they made for us. We watched it in the back room prior to coming in, and it's absolutely wonderful, so thank you. Gene Stovall, what was not in that article, he's a buddy of mine, and he truly got his start at the Beechwood School Talent Show that I happened to direct for 11 years. So I speak firsthand of, the whole family's talented, but he is just unbelievable, so I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't know. And just one final word on committee assignments. I did spend many, many hours doing committee assignments, trying to match up what I thought the needs of the district were, as well as the talents of the board members. We have an extremely talented board, and I did try to match them up to what I thought was best, and did in fact add some new committees this year where I thought we had a little bit of an information gap, and it could only enrich our board work in helping to promote the district. I'm sorry you chose not to chair the Parent Engagement Committee, because I thought that was a good tie-in with the Take Your Father to School Day, but certainly that is your choice, much as it was my choice who I did ask to serve on committees. So I think what I hope for this year is that we all deepen our knowledge of the different avenues we have in the district. This district's so large and complex, and by working together and sharing knowledge, we can strengthen our board, because the strength of the school district starts with the strength of the school board and our functioning. So nothing else to be said? Yeah. No, we're going to have a motion to adjourn. Khaleesi, seconded by Fink. All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Give us a minute, and we will start the Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. You ready? Okay. I'd like to call the January 25th, 2012 meeting of the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit to order. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
Here. Mrs. Khaleesi?
Here.
Mrs. Fink?
Here.
Dr. Holly?
Here.
Mr. Eisler?
Present.
Mr. McCray?
Here.
Ms. Shealy's absent. Mr. Sumter?
Present.
Mrs. Azuda?
Here. Will board members please turn to the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions?
Hearing none, move to approve.
Khaleesi, Eisler, all those in favor? Okay, the minutes of the December 20th, 2000 legislative meeting are approved. Before we begin, Ms. Linda Bear will be describing a change she is recommending to the item for the rental of space for the intermediate unit.
If you would please go to the business page and go to number 2 under consultants and contracted services and go to A. The current language states that a 5-year lease agreement, and it should state a 2-year lease agreement, and the change in the amount of money would then turn to $116,820 for the 2-year lease. The amount? All. The current language states a 5-year lease agreement and should read a 2-year lease agreement, and therefore the amount for the 2-year contract would be $116,820. It's for 2 years. It would be $58,410 for 1 year.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Bear. We'll go to the Committee on Education that is submitted by Ms. Shealy, Chair, and her committee. Are there any questions that were not addressed at agenda review? Mr. Brentley?
No.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Mrs. Fink? Dr. Hawley? No. Mr. Eisler?
No, ma'am, they were answered. Thank you.
Mr. McCray? Mr. Sumter?
None.
Seeing none, Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call, please?
Brentley? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Items approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Let's move to the committee report on business that is before you, submitted by Mrs. Khaleesi, Business Chair, and Mr. McCray, Finance Chair. Are there any questions or comments that were not addressed at agenda review or that are now because of the change being made? Mr. Brentley?
No.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Mrs. Fink? Dr. Hawley? Mr. Eisler?
No, ma'am.
Mr. McCray? Mr. Sumter?
None.
On business, Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Dr. Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Items approved.
Thank you. There is no personnel report for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit this evening. Are there any other items to be brought before the board at this time?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Khaleesi, Fink, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Wow. Meeting's adjourned.